Meeting to order, October 2nd, 2018 meeting. First item on our agenda is the minutes from our September 25th meeting. Is there any additions or corrections? If not, we can approve them by unanimous consent. Seeing none, we'll do that. Any members of the council have anything they want to bring before the council?
Yes.
Hopefully you want to.
I passed out there's 2 pages, and it's in reference to our first annual Freedom Fund banquet for the NAACP. That's going to be at the American Legion. It's $40 a person, and it's business attire, cash bar. But on the second page is for an advertisement. We're asking businesses or council people or candidates if you would like to put in a business card, a quarter page, half page, full page. You can do so for our souvenir brochure, and that has to be turned in by the 8th of October, and the prices are listed on the page. You can call myself, or you can call Darlene Kroon if you want to place an ad in the brochure. Okay?
Yeah. Anything else?
Just a reminder that next week is the KCADV Domestic Violence Purple Purse Challenge Luncheon, which is going to be held at Mount Tucky Home. And it will have the MC from Wave TV 3, Don G, and it will have a program. There will be food served. You can go online, or you can contact me in reference to the luncheon, and hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members have anything to bring up? Okay, on the mayor's report, I just need to report the Rotary Club postponed their Kids' Day due to the weather a week or so ago, so it's been rescheduled for October the 18th. It's Thursday here on the front lawn of City Hall, so just want to make that announcement. And then something else that's come up, it really doesn't require council approval, so to speak, but I want to bring it before you. I've had a number of requests from people in the Edgewood area, particularly the Edgewood area where it intersects with Rosewood. They are saying the speed of the traffic in that area is pretty dangerous. For, that's a lot of school children walking down through there. A lot of school children live down that way. If you know, up the next block where Edgewood and Dogwood intersects, it's a 3-way stop. And of course, if you go over parallel to that, over on Payne and South 4th, is a 3-way stop, and where 3rd Street intersects with Gilkey Runs, 3-way stop. Guthrie Drive and Honeysuckle, 3-way stop. So it's fairly common that we have these 3-way stops around town. So they have asked if we would consider doing a 3-way stop there at Rosewood and Edgewood, the first entrance to Rosewood as you enter into the Edgewood subdivision. So I spoke with Ben Bird and Larry Hamilton today. Jessica is out on vacation. They didn't see any problem. Larry just went on to say that over the years we have had requests and complaints from that area about the speed, and talking about everything from putting a speed limit sign or children to play sign up, which we don't put the children to play sign up. So I've heard from probably 5 or 6 residents right there on the Edgewood, and actually one on Rosewood, because as they come off of Rosewood wanting to turn left, the speed of the traffic is dangerous for them as well. So if you all don't have anything problem with that, Ben said it's not a big issue to put up there. We might need to park a police car there early on so that people know that there is going to be a stop sign there. We don't want them just going to work one morning and coming back that afternoon and running it. Unless anybody has any objection to that, I think people down there would really appreciate that.
I don't have an objection to it. But I wanted to add that also the complaints for South 4th, coming off that hill from Heaven Hill, they come down, they fly through the stop sign. That's also a problem area, and it has not been corrected. Someone flew through the stop sign, and my car was parked outside of a house, and they almost hit me. So that has not been fixed, and we need something down there as well, some kind of monitor or sign or something, because they're not even paying attention to the stop signs. At first, it was all the trees and things like that was blocking the view of the stop sign, but now there's no excuse for that because it's been mowed and maintained.
Well, we may have to ask the police to set up down there a little bit. Had some of those neighbors in Edgewood, they volunteered, said the police could park in my driveway anytime, once that intersection.
Well, they did one time at Guilty Run Road, at Third Guilty Run Road. I know one day I was out, and one of the police officers were there, and they got a bunch of tickets. They ticketed quite a few, but that's on Third and Guilty Run, Third, with Third and Fourth. But they had a field day down there that day. So,
Mayor, coming down, I used to live in Edgewood, so I'm familiar with that curve there where Dr. Harry Spalding lives. It's right, that stop sign coming down that hill, I can see there could be maybe a little bit of a situation.
We
there.
talked about
Maybe a
that,
situation.
we talked about that, and I drove back down there again this afternoon. If you're not going 40 or 45 miles an hour, you should be able to see it plenty of time to stop. And probably most of the traffic down there is residents or their family members, and over time, they should pretty much know it's there. And that's why we want to announce it at a public meeting, so that they know it's coming, it'll be there. But
They can always augment it also with the prepare to stop. And I know what you're saying, if you're going by Dr. Harry's and heading down that hill, they can always augment that with a prepare to stop sign too, so that people know it's coming.
I rode down there just before I came up here. We talked about that this morning, but they don't think that Public Works and engineers don't think it's
Is that
a great
right?
idea. So, okay, anything else on that? I think you all heard we got a couple of problem spots we need to look at going forward. We have a special guest, but he's next on the agenda, but she's disappeared. So Chief Magley wants to give us an update on
Yes,
our newest firefighting members.
several of you have either emailed me or questioned, hey, we haven't seen Oreo since she was first brought on the department. How big has she gotten? So she's gotten pretty good size. She was 6 months old yesterday. She has completed her first set of training. She'll have another one in about 6 months. We're staying very busy with her. Probably about 3 activities a week that we have her booked for. October is fire prevention month, so we're really booked with her on this. Jill, here's one of our handlers. She's going to demonstrate. We teach the kids stop, drop, and roll. I had one class, I said, what do you do if your clothes catch on fire? And they said, take your clothes off, or jump in the swimming pool. I mean, every type of answer there was. But Oreo showed them stop, drop, and roll. And by the time we left that class, every one of those kids were doing it and knew the saying of it. So we're going to demonstrate stop, drop, and roll, hopefully here.
Stop, drop, roll.
Do it again.
Stop.
When we go out to activities with her, she has a vest on, has her Bardstown Fire Department ID on her. She is a totally different dog when she puts that vest on. She knows it's time to go to work. Once she's done, we take that vest off, she's back to a 6-month-old puppy. So she doesn't have her vest on tonight and stuff, but we just want to let you know what's going on with her and let y'all see her since everybody's asking about her.
She's come a long way.
She has
She's growing.
grown quite a bit. Grown quite a bit.
Paul.
like I said, maybe 10 o'clock.
She knows when the Sam's around.
Roll.
Yes.
Roll. No, roll.
If anybody has an activity coming up that you want her at, just let us know. I do have you on the book for the girls and stuff, so. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Wait.
Okay, we have two requests from Main Street. Randy Mauser is here with us for Main Street. Randy, would you like to talk to us? I guess first on the agenda is Halloween Spooktacular, request for road closing, and then the next one is your Light Up Bardstown
Right.
request.
The difference that we were doing this year, or we're trying to get approved this year for the Halloween Spectacular, is I was trying to, for the safety of the children, because we do bring probably up to 1,000 kids, plus you think 1 or 2 parents each that come with each child downtown for trick-or-treating. And it usually starts after school, which is around 3:30, which is why I put in the proposal for doing a 2 o'clock road closure, because it takes time for us to get the streets closed from the traffic that's currently parked there. So for the safety of the children was the whole purpose of why I wanted to try to get the road closed for the kids that will be coming for the trick-or-treating on the 26th.
And then staying closed till 9.
The reason that we were doing that, which we can change that if you all still, see fit to do so, but we take all the children after they do their trick-or-treating to the farmer's market, and then they have games, and then we do a movie that starts at 6. And then typically that would be over around 8, and so for them to get back to their vehicles in time would be about 9.
Well, I've been serving calls about the issue of closing down West Flagey and East Flagey, going from 3rd to the alleyways on
Right.
the side. Of course, Friday afternoon, the bank's still at 6, and
Right.
they have an issue with people getting in and out back and forth.
Well, I did talk to Rafa Webster at County Country Bank, and I did let him know that we wouldn't be closing the part where the people could get into like their drive-through until after hours. So that would be on East Flagey, right across from the farmer's market. So that would eliminate that issue as far as like a business.
On East Flagey.
Mm-hmm.
What about West Flagey?
West Flagey would only go up to the parking lot.
City parking lot.
So people could still get in and out, no problem through there. Basically just like we do for the street concert, it'd be the same closure.
I didn't hear from the second block, but I did hear from some people on the first block of 3rd Street, and also from the banks on the East Flagey. East Flagey, I heard pretty much they didn't want it closed at all, and I heard from merchants on 3rd Street concerned that, traffic
Yeah.
from 3 o'clock in the afternoon on most days is
Very
really tough on 3rd Street.
Right.
Friday is probably the worst day of the week, and to close that down, I mean, I'm not for the safety of the children and so forth, but I'm just envisioning from feedback I've gotten and just my own experience that closing that 2 blocks down at that time of day on a Friday is going to create a major problem.
Right.
So that's been the feedback I've gotten from merchants that I've talked to.
Would there be an option if we couldn't get the road closed to maybe have like police personnel there to escort traffic? Like going across the center of Main Street for the kids for that purpose? So we still have that safety standpoint, but yet we still keep the roads open.
You mean as they walk, say, from across it from the west side of 3rd Street to the east side of 3rd Street at Flagey and 3rd and that area?
Plus, I think the kids would like it, too. Having police there.
Anytime we've ever done special events, it balances the needs of the organizer with the stakeholders and the citizens that go up and down 3rd Street, especially on a Friday in the afternoon. A couple of things that we would suggest is to have personnel staffing the intersections on 3rd Street. That way the kids or whoever can get back and forth safely across the street. Put signages and block up, but you can get the viewable messaging boards to say, to notify the drivers, hey, there's an event up here, watch out for this. If you get the viewable message boards that are lit up, the bigger ones, people see that more than just a standard sign.
Would you put, does that come from the state? Like, did we put that, say, almost near Broadway and 3rd, so they one, and then maybe east and west City of Foster possibly?
Yes, sir. So we used to rent them from Highway Safety Services, but the county, I know the state has them, and we could probably partner with them to get some of those out there. They run about 150 a week for one of them, so we used to just rent them because we use so many of them, but so you use the media outreach, you use the signage, and you put the people in place. Personally, I don't think 3rd Street would need to be shut down if you put those resources and interventions in place right there. And then it boils down to resources for us. Do we have, 4 or 5 officers to be able to dedicate through that time frame all day long to be able to do that? I'm not sure that we do.
I think you and I talked about possibly at least having maybe one cruiser park at the intersection of Flagey and 3rd, just right there, one of the, on the east side or the west side, with lights on. It would be another visual thing to keep traffic. Of course, traffic's not going to be moving very fast. I'll tell you, traffic doesn't hardly move more than 3 miles an hour through there. So I don't know that the safety is going to be an issue with speed. It's just the number of cars.
And you create a domino. If you do shut that down, you're going to create a tremendous domino effect. You put about 130 cars in a mile of traffic. So if you shut that section down, the nerve center of Bardstown from Louisville getting south to everything, it is going to create domino effect because you won't just have to shut 3rd Street. You're going to have to do a piece of Stephen Foster to make all that work right. Then it's going to dominate the 3rd, 4th Street, 5th Street on over. 5th Street's already going to be problematic as it naturally is. So you're just going to create a lot more issues that are to be dealt with where you can probably do some things with a couple thousand people with some treatments of people on the street, signage, and getting the word out through the media.
School getting out at 3 o'clock, and that's always congestion down there.
Right.
But down at the Flash, after the bank's closed, you're talking about having everybody go down to the farmer's market for the movies or whatever, and maybe, at 6 or 7 o'clock or something, I don't know. Be a problem, just close on Flash if you get a whole lot of overflow from the farmer's market out on the street. It's like the craft beer festival, it's closed down for that, but it's after hours.
Yeah, you could probably close East Flagey to that half block area, which is what they do for the beer festival. I think you could probably do that.
After, during that movie time, or, when everybody's moving down there, I think that would probably work.
After 6 o'clock.
As long as after 6 o'clock. When's the beer festival closing down? About 6 or 7, I guess.
That's on Saturday.
It's on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's on Saturday, yeah. Friday's different, so the bank's open till, bank's closed till noon, and yeah, but that's not gonna happen, you said till 8 or 7:30 or 8?
The movie starts at 6, so from about 6 to 8, and then it'll be
Okay.
over.
Randy, would you be okay if we didn't take an official position as far as the closure tonight and let you all have some more dialogue with
Sure.
Assistant Chief Seeley and see if you talk about what volunteers you might be able to provide?
Sure.
I mean, we want to be helpful, but I think we also want to make sure it doesn't create a boondoggle.
Right. Absolutely.
I know
You've got a
sidewalks
little-
get crushed.
You've got a little more time. We've got some time since it's late in the month, the 26th, right?
26th.
Yeah. So why don't we work, if you're all okay with that, let's maybe go with it this way and
Sure.
see if we can work out some few more.
And I'll get with you all on it.
Parameters
That'll be
on that.
fine. Perfect.
Okay, the next one might not be as problematic.
Nothing's changed.
Brandon, do we do anything for the private parking lots there too? Yeah, that was another question that came up, was people going in like parking in the bank or parking in these businesses that are open. Do you have any way to monitor, do y'all do anything to help prevent that?
I mean, there's
No.
usually signs that say no parking if you're not part of it, but there's really no prevention of
Just be their own
anything.
side.
Well, I know
Right.
Town and Country Bank said they were already gonna have to hire security anyway, just because even if you didn't close
Right,
East Flash A, they gotta hire security to just keep the parents from parking there
right.
and bringing their children.
I mean, I can always.
And they're okay with that, I think they're cool with that. They just said restricting the flow of traffic on east or west is problematic for them.
Randy, what kind of issue will that present for the people that, live in apartment complexes and so forth in that area?
They all have restricted parking anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem for them. They all have their assigned registered parking for the
They
apartment.
do, in the back.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, if people park there when they're not supposed to, there's nothing I can do about it, but unfortunately.
Some do, some don't. There's some
Right.
on East Flash A that don't have assigned parking, some apartments on that, and I think on West Flash A as well.
I know the ones that are like behind like near the farmer's market, they do have, and the ones that are on the other side of Flagey, like behind the tap house and stuff, like they are all marked. Yeah.
Didn't do much good, but they're marked.
Right.
Exactly, I mean, I can't prevent people from parking there, but
Just like it could.
there is a sign.
It's
Yeah,
Halloween, it's gonna be wide open, so.
it is, yeah, and it's like that every year.
We'll work with you, but I think need to come up with a compromise here. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Anything else from the council, any other questions on this particular event? The next one is the Light at Bardstown. You want to kind of go through that? We have been doing this for the last few years, so.
Yeah, nothing's gonna change as far as what we've done in the previous years. The street will close from 5 to 8. The first block only. You won't have anything to do with the second block. And then West Flagey, because the fire truck will come down West Flagey, down through the first block. But we will also have to make sure that half of the circle are barricaded because the people will be walking up to Court Square. So nothing's changed on that one. It's the same way as it's been every year. Any questions on that?
We have the map. I don't think, the map wasn't attached, I don't think, on the iPad, but I think we were familiar with that one. Is there any other questions of Randy on that one? Then I would, I guess, ask for a motion then to approve the request for Main Street for the Light Up Bardstown street closures.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Copeland, do I have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Jones. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Let's go real quick, if you don't mind. Let's wait till the amendment to the sidewalks, and we'll get Jan catch her breath real quick. And then go with, let's go to the classification and compensation plan, B 2018, regarding the school resource officer. I know we had some out-of-town media, but I think if you all gotten most of your interviews done, because most of the discussion was last week as we introduced the change to the classification. So it's just the addition of one more officer.
You mean they're not here to hear me read this?
Let's read it again.
Well, that's what I need to do.
Okay.
Ordinance B 2018-21, an ordinance amending and adopting as amended an ordinance styled an ordinance creating classification and compensation plan. This ordinance amends Ordinance B 2018-17 and Chapter 35 Employment Policies, the classification plan and compensation plan in the municipal code by amending the number of authorized positions, their title and pay grade, and setting wages for pay grades for city employees for fiscal year 2018-19 and subsequent years. The amendments and additions reflecting the number of positions, title, and pay grade respectively are: Police Department, number of positions, strike 17, add 18. Title, Police Officer, grade 109. This ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are repealed to the extent of such conflict. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect following publication and summary as required by law.
Thank you, Tim. And I would ask for a motion to approve B 2018-21 as it relates to the compensation and classification plan.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Okay, this is a second reading, so I need individual votes. So all those in favor would signify by saying aye, and I'll start with Councilman Jones.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Chief and Assistant Chief are on the lookout now for this resource officer. We're excited to have them join our force as well as assisting with our Bardstown Independent School System. So good job by everybody on getting this moving forward. Okay, thank you. The last thing that's on our agenda for this evening is the planning and zoning subdivision regulations amendment to section 4.6 sidewalks. This has really come to our attention, the need for this, for two reasons. Number one, when we applied for the grant for the extension of the sidewalks on 245 from 62 over to roughly Kroger's. Part of the stipulation of that grant is that the city would promote connectivity to that, to our sidewalks. So that was one of the first things that came up. In the past, we had an automatic waiver because we didn't have anything to connect to, for the most part, along those lines. So now that we will be having sidewalks, particularly on the 245 corridor, it just makes sense now that we consider changing the waiver from just going away from an automatic waiver to giving people direction to connect where it's practical. It doesn't mean that you would not have the ability to request a waiver where it might make sense. Meaning like say a residential subdivision that had to have deep ditches, for drainage and that sort of thing, large lots, so forth. That would still probably be practical to request a waiver, but particularly in this commercial corridor is what we're really focusing on, I think, this evening. So I don't know, Tim and Jan might want to add to what I've just said. But,
Well, I can provide a little bit of history about this, Mayor, because this section, I think, dates back to probably the mid-1990s when there was a major rewrite to the subdivision regulations. And I can recall there was a committee that did this, that was city and county engineering people, myself, and some of the development community, health department, just people that were involved in the process. And this will tell you the change in how, people, their lifestyles, I guess. But when this was done, the 100-foot waiver was first done in terms of residential because there was some thought that out in the county on lower density lots that you wouldn't need sidewalks, that, there's just not a need for it. 100-foot lots are typically, were at the time, maybe not as much now, but at the time were considered non-sewered lots, septic system lots. Your ones that were on sewer were typically 75 feet in width. So what it basically did said, sewered lots, sidewalks, non-sewered lots, no sidewalks. And then in terms of commercial, the thought was you just don't have people walking around in commercial developments. You just don't have it. And now you see it regularly. As a matter of fact, I know we had a tragic accident out on 245 just the other evening. Somebody walking down the road. And so you have people like in the development over off of Chambers, you have people that are staying in the hotel and want to go to Taco Bell. They have to walk in the road. And you just wouldn't, back then you just didn't really think about it too much. Now you think about it all the time. It's a relatively common thing. People are more likely to ride a bike or walk than they ever were back in that time. So I think this is, I think that, and I'll let Jan weigh in, but I think that the times have changed to where you're correct that the presumption should be not that it's waived completely, but the presumption that it is waived only when, there are extenuating circumstances. And we are new development. I know Travis can tell you that we have new development where you say this makes sense to connect with sidewalks. It makes sense that you would want to connect this with sidewalks. It makes sense that you would want to connect along 245 with the multi-purpose path. But we can't require them to do it because most of those lots, almost every commercial lot is over 100 foot. So basically what you're saying is no commercial development would have to do sidewalks.
And also back to that point, from the city standpoint, as we reached outside the city, the outer edges of the city, we didn't have connectivity. Stephen Foster didn't have sidewalks. Way out North 3rd Street didn't have sidewalks. Templin didn't have sidewalks.
Right.
We've added quite a few sidewalks even within the older sections of town now. Up in Henrytown, the Maple Hill areas have had sidewalks added since that time period, and we've continued to work on sidewalks. So we're a lot more connected than we were back when this was put in place. So Jan, would you like to?
Well, we have the subdivision regulations that's dealing with subdividing property and when the streets are being put in, and that's one issue. Then we also have the design standards ordinance where we're dealing on the back end when the actual commercial establishment's being developed. The commercial establishment's design standards ordinance has a provision to require sidewalks, but these sidewalks need to be in when the streets are in. And that's when we're getting behind the curve, is when, at the subdivision, especially with the one that we're dealing with off of 245, they're designing the roadway and the lots over 100. Everything that comes in now is over 100. It's 100 and above. Nobody's going to put in sidewalks anywhere in the county with that automatic waiver. So we could actually require the sidewalk at the time that the development goes in, but that's not the time to do it. Especially if you're wanting connectivity, because some lots might not be developed for 1 or 2 years. So the concern is when do we do that, and at the subdivision regulations when they're platting is at the time, and then with the design standards ordinance, we can catch those other lots as they come in that haven't been developed and need a sidewalk, we can do that. So that's where we are, is trying to get that waiver. I think the Planning Commission, we've had a couple of subdivisions that have come in that the Planning Commission would really, they're in an urban area, there's an area, there's a place to connect on, and the Planning Commission, I think, has been wanting to see this. The question is, right now, is just having that amended just for the city of Bardstown at this point, and then at some point, we look at the entire county as a whole, and I think base it on a comprehensive plan later, but right now, just trying to get it for commercial only, or look at residential. I think there's several different ways we can write the amendment, so. And the amendment would only require planning commission public hearing, one public hearing, and then the final action by the planning commission.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that this is a case of where the planning commission typically would want a request like this to originate with the council. But what you would be asking is for them to consider language like this, and then the actual approval of subdivision regulations is final upon approval by the planning commission. By state law. So it would not come back to you all. We would actually be asking them to consider it and then approve it.
So if we were to just, because tonight we're just talking about changing from the automatic waiver, just changing that to whether it's not an automatic, but they still can request a waiver.
They can still request a waiver under the subdivision regulations. There's a variance that's allowed if they have some topographical constraint or some other reason. Then they can always come back and ask for a waiver from the planning commission during the platting stage, and then we will obviously come back to Jessica or Travis and get their opinion on that waiver before we act.
That's what I'm looking at, is this chicken or the egg type thing? Is it better for us to do the waiver, eliminate the automatic waiver now, and that you all take it from there and do something else with the subdivision regs?
Well, that's what I'm here for, is to get direction. I mean, we can change it in the subdivision regulations with one public hearing. I mean, so we just need direction from you all as to what you want, how you want that amendment to read. And then Travis, the mayor and I talked this afternoon about curb and gutter. It's an automatic waiver for curb and gutter too. So if you're just looking at the curb and gutter, or you're just looking at sidewalks, or
The existing subdivisions, would they be grandfathered in?
yes.
Yeah, subdivision regulations only apply when you're subdividing the land. And once the land's subdivided, those regulations no longer apply.
And that's when the design standards ordinance would pick up for any commercial buildings. That's
So
when
the
they
commercial,
require.
even if commercial's been planted, subdivided, design stage would catch those, but not
That's
the
correct.
residential.
That's right.
Like, for example, the commercial, can you give me, where would that apply?
The commercial?
Yeah.
We have several developments out along 245 now. Mainstream would be one of them, as well as there's next to Corbin's, the Marvin Downs property, Creekview, off of Creekview Court, it's 80-foot wide long street. That's currently being considered, and so all those have connection to that multi-use path. And without that, right now they're planning on proposing over 100-foot wide, which means that automatic waiver would apply. And then, we could get, have the sidewalks put in place with the design standards ordinance, but you're looking at parcel by parcel rather than requiring that the plat comes in.
There's a lot, the reason it's come up is there's a lot of interest proposals for hotel development.
We have a hotel war right now.
Yeah, and the hotels, you see a hotel going in at various places along Highway 245, both ends, and they're relatively close to restaurants, which, you know, go figure. But they can't get there without walking through the street or, you know, and it just, so what you say is instead of, you know, there's no possibility of getting sidewalks unless they voluntarily do it, and then it's only on their property. Or you say, we're going to require it all the time unless you get a waiver. And so that's, you're just flip-flopping it, where it's automatic all the time as opposed to now you have to ask and have a good reason not to, as opposed to assume that there's a reason not to.
Are any of the hotels within, proposed hotels within city limits?
All of them.
All of them? The Munden property is in the city? I didn't know it.
We have applications on,
There's 3 or 4 on the table kind of
there's
right
4
now.
on, there's 4.
We bring it back, then,
So Jan, would the waiver application first go through planning and zoning, and then it's approved on your end of it, and then it would come to council if it's in the city limits?
No, what we would do is, if they requested a waiver with the plat, we have a subdivision review committee, which Jessica and Travis sit on. And so if that waiver comes in, then we would obviously get the approval through the engineers before we would even proceed with it.
But it's 100% decision of the planning commission. We don't have any
We don't have any
veto or say in
And that's based
whatsoever.
on your opinions as to the density of the area and what type of foot traffic there's likely to be.
Right. I mean, if a plat comes in, that's not my expertise, so that's why we have a subdivision review committee that reviews the plats. We distribute the plats to all the agencies and utilities. So before if the planning commission makes any decisions on it, then we get their approval first.
Actually, there's nothing to stop the city from weighing in at the hearing stage, but we don't have any decision.
Right.
Any other questions for Jan or Tim or Travis?
I have a question for Travis. On the sidewalks without curb and gutter, is that going to be an issue with the ditch? Having a ditch
Well, I mean,
or do they kind of go hand in hand?
it kind of goes hand in hand, but I know one of the ones we're looking at right now is kind of almost unique, where we kind of work with them because we don't think it's going to work on both sides, so we would make a waiver for partial curb and gutter type deal. So I mean, that's something too, if you can't get it to work for the full subdivision, I mean, it would work where you start at curb and gutter and tie it into state boxes and then go to ditch section after that. It kind of goes hand in hand, but I think it'd be good to have them request a waiver in those situations.
But are you saying that we ask for eliminate the waiver on the curb and gutter too?
Yeah.
Well, that's not part of this.
Just decide.
Yeah, we've not, it's not on the agenda tonight, but,
So just decide.
and just so that y'all are aware, curb and gutter eliminates, you know, when you start talking about the lot is flat from the curb back. Because the drainage is in ground, as opposed to ditch, which has got the swale, you know, it goes down and up. It's very difficult, or can be difficult, to accommodate a sidewalk in that right of way with that ditch. It just, and then if the ditch is steep, you got the possibility of people falling in the ditch.
Chambers Boulevard is a good example of that, right?
If you got plenty of right of way, it's no problem. But when you're tight and you got rock in the way and all that, it's curb and gutter is a lot better scenario. You get the sidewalk in, and like I'm talking about, you can always, if they want to give you more right of way, you can go to a ditch section and have a sidewalk further back. Kind of like what we did we extended Ben Fry over summer. That's a ditch section there, and we just have the sidewalk a little bit further off the street because we have enough right of way there.
My concern is that everybody asks for a waiver due to the ditch scenario.
Right.
So that would be my concern is.
Well, and that's where I think that the next step is going to probably be Travis and Jessica looking at curb and gutter and see whether that automatic waiver, which is 100 foot also, whether that needs to be done away with. But that is, it's a separate issue and it's a little more complex. from an engineering
It
standpoint.
goes a little bit hand in hand with the sidewalk.
Goes, yeah, like Jan said, that you're gonna have people that are coming in and say, well, with the ditch, we can't do it, and I would suggest saying, then do curb and gutter, you know, as opposed to just an automatic waiver. I mean,
Well, and when there's a new street involved, there is a trade-off, I think, as far as the width of the street. If you put curb and gutter in, you get to reduce the width of your street by 2 feet, isn't that correct? So there's a trade-off there from a cost standpoint. If you add the curb and gutter, then you get to reduce the width of your street, so there's an offset. That doesn't necessarily mean there's always a one-to-one offset in terms of cost, but it's an incentive. It looks better and it works better, really.
So I just need, are we gonna go with the sidewalks and we can write it up just as?
I think that sidewalks is on for tonight, and I would suggest that Jessica and Travis get together and decide whether that's, so you may have at some point a request from engineering to do something similar, request the planning commission to do something similar with curb and gutter. I don't know that I don't know that they fully discussed that. I'd hate to say, for you all to say, yeah, I'll do that, and without Travis and Jessica fully discussing that out.
You're comfortable with us eliminating the waiver tonight, because as far as the automatic waiver, it doesn't mean the waiver won't ever be granted. They have that option. Just now it's going away from automatic. I think we've addressed the changes that have happened within the city limits as far as connectivity. It's now more practical to eliminate the waiver, because we have areas now that are more connected with sidewalks. And people want access to a lot of these commercial properties by foot in a safe manner, instead of walking down ditch lines and grass and so forth.
Are you getting negative feedback from any developers over not having that waiver? Are you getting-
This is the first that it will.
First public knowledge of it.
It will be.
Tim, this also says that 100 feet of road frontage unless the roadway is located within the corporate city limits of the city of Bardstown. So what is the limit when it's within the corporate city limits? How does that change from the 100-foot variance or the 100-foot?
Well, what it says, there's an automatic waiver granted for roadways unless the roadway is located within the corporate city limits of Bardstown. So right now it says there's an automatic waiver if you got 100 feet of road frontage, period. Anywhere. And this would change it to unless it's located within the corporate limits of Bardstown, which means that automatic waiver would be taken off of the table.
Okay.
So that's the waiver, they meet the rest of it up above, they have to meet the rest of the criteria.
So that's the.
They mean that it costs too much, and, we don't want to spend the money, they have to show one of these items on this regulation,
So they still have an option, it just would take it to the automatic.
And in terms of input, Councilman Buckland, the planning commission, that's why they have a hearing, and they probably will hear from a few people that are disgruntled. Not very many that are gruntled, but a few disgruntled
Came from the city of
people.
Bardstown.
And yeah, they'll blame the city council. That's why it's before you all tonight, to make your all's, to ask them to hold a hearing and consider that. And that's what, by the way, the action that you all would take tonight would be to recommend that the planning commission consider an amendment as is shown here to the subdivision regulations, and then they take it from there. They have a hearing, they would approve or not approve that request.
At your hearing, you transcribe it and then have the vote at another hearing like you do?
Well, it depends on when we're gonna hold the hearing, so typically they'll vote the same night, as long, if they feel comfortable.
You send us an email when the hearing's released?
I can.
Once again, what really prompted this discussion to begin with was the grant, and the language in the grant, and this, now that the Highway 245 corridor is going to have sidewalks available. Years past, it just didn't make sense to force them to do it because there wasn't anything to connect to. Today, we do have that. That's where I see more of the issue than anything at this point. Hotels, restaurants, stores, grocery stores, a lot of pedestrian traffic want access to those.
There's a lot more, come back in later and put it in at city expense and try to work around all the stuff like this other sidewalk we're doing. There's a lot of obstacles that they're working around the way to get it in there somehow.
Any other questions of Jan or Tim on this? And I would ask if anyone would like to make a motion to approve the amendment.
Well, again, ask them
Or
to,
ask,
consider an amendment, please.
Because that's what we're asking the planners on to consider amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
so move.
Motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Councilman Douglas. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jan, for taking time. I know you left one meeting to come to another meeting.
Took all of 6 minutes of our first time board adjustments.
Well, we appreciate your time here, because this took a little longer. I don't have anything else on the agenda. Anyone else have anything to bring before council this evening?
If anybody would like to stay for a rec board meeting, you're welcome to stay at 6 o'clock.
I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Copeland, and second by Councilman Shekels. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.